Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be looking at demonstrative pronouns, looking at a little of this and that. The words this and that are demonstrative pronouns in English. And demonstrative pronouns still stand in for some person, place, or thing. They're standing in for a nominal in the sentence. But this time the demonstrative pronouns point specifically to a familiar one, a familiar person, place, or thing. Maybe it's one that has already been mentioned in the context, and so we don't have to say the man over again. We can just say this man to point out that we're talking about the same specific one we were talking about before. Often we'll be talking, when we use the demonstrative pronouns, about some object or person that's present and visible. Although this isn't always literal, sometimes we can say, well, this car is better than that car, and we're not standing in the driveway in front of them, but we have been talking about two cars, and so mentally we still have them in our mental view. It's as if the speaker, then, is giving a demonstration, pointing to an example, and that's why we call them the demonstrative pronoun. Demonstration, demonstrative. We're going to focus for this video on the near demonstrative pronoun, this. With this, we're pointing to something nearby. And we're going to see familiar endings with just a slightly different stem. If you remember, the third person stem for pronouns, for regular personal pronouns, was out. And here, for the near demonstrative pronoun, the stem is toot in the masculine and neuter, or tout in the feminine. And then we just put on the first and second declension case endings and use the normal connecting vowel. The one problem here is that the nominative forms, which are the ones we're using first, learning first, are actually irregular. So, what's irregular about these? Well, you'll notice that I said the stem of the near demonstrative pronoun is toot or tout, but the masculine form in the nominative is hoot os, and in the feminine is hout a. The neuter has the proper stem, tuta, but the masculine and feminine have dropped the initial tau, and instead of that initial tau, we have a rough breathing mark. Why? I don't know. Again, these were highly commonly used words, and commonly used words tend to get the corners knocked off them. And that's probably the historical reason why we have hutos and not tutos. Be that as it may, these are the nominative forms. Hutos, haute, and tuta mean this. And notice with the neuter form that whereas in nouns, the neuter nominative singular noun ending would normally be on, right? In pronouns, it tends not to be on. The new tends to drop off, and it's just ah. Again, why? Probably just because the word was used so much. So let's look at the personal pronouns and the demonstrative pronouns side by side here to make sure right from the start that we can differentiate them clearly. Because if we can't, if we're fuzzy about this, it's going to cause problems later on. The key is that there are different stems. The personal pronoun stem is out. The demonstrative pronoun stem for the near demonstrative pronoun is toot or tout. Out means him, her, it. Toot or tout means this. And if you think about the extra letter on the front, reminding us that there's an extra force to the demonstrative pronoun, that might help you a little bit. what we have to remember is that in the nominative forms, that initial tau has dropped off of the demonstrative pronouns for the masculine and feminine and been replaced just with a rough breathing mark, an H sound. And so hutos ends up looking more like autos than it would if that tau were still at the beginning. But if you remember that that rough breathing mark is the remnant of the initial tau, that'll help you to remember again that there's an extra idea in hutos. Not just him, but this person, this man. The closest looking pair are haute and aute, and here it's just a matter of which direction the breathing mark faces. But again, if you think about the pronunciation, there's an extra sound at the beginning of haute, that H sound from the rough breathing, and aute starts just with the vowel sounds. Tuta in the demonstrative pronoun, the neuter form, is probably the easiest of the nominative forms to distinguish because you have that extra tau of the proper stem at the beginning, and so it doesn't really look very much at all like auta. Tuta is this, auta is it. But notice that the one thing that's consistent in the neuter forms is that in both of these pronouns, the neuter nominative singular form is a. The ending is a instead of on. One of the things that can be confusing about demonstrative pronouns is that the definite article can actually act like a demonstrative pronoun. This makes some sense because the two constructions, a definite article and a demonstrative pronoun, really play a very similar role in the language. Both of them point out a particular member of the class that's expressed by the noun. So how do we know when to translate the definite article as this or that? Well, we really have to infer this from context. So if there's an individual member of the class, an individual representative of the noun that's already been under discussion, and it's referred to again using the definite article, sometimes in English we would express that using the demonstrative pronoun, this. And sometimes, even if something hasn't been discussed earlier, if the individual under discussion is observable at hand by the speaker, it's right there, then in English we would sometimes better translate the definite article with this. So either it means this because we've been discussing it already, or it means this because it's the one right here in front of me. But really, this is something that is a judgment call. There isn't any solid grammatical indicator of when the definite article should be translated as a demonstrative pronoun, translated as this. It's something that is an interpretive judgment call, but it's important that you know that it's something that the article can do. So sometimes the expression he gune he mu meter can mean not the woman is my mother, but this woman is my mother. You can learn more about demonstrative pronouns in Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek, and the numbers, section numbers and page numbers are here for Mounce's 3rd edition. Just note that Mounce introduces both the near and far demonstrative pronouns together. We're just focusing on the near demonstrative pronoun for the time being, and we'll learn the far demonstrative pronoun that later on.